Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Honor to the Sublime One, the Worthy One, the Fully Enlightened One. So welcome everybody. Do I see any new faces? I don't. I think I know everybody. Is there anybody who hasn't been to one of my events before? Oh, okay, Susanna. I thought I had recognized your name. Probably somebody else with a similar name. So welcome. Are you new to the Buddhist Center in general, or just new to me? Good, good. Okay, so that's probably why I recognize the name at least. So, okay, I'll do an introduction. My name is Jayantha, formerly known here as Ferox. Jayantha is my Pali name. I am a 35. Well, I gotta remember the 35. I'm so used to saying 34. 35-year-old lay Buddhist disciple of the Theravada tradition. I've been on staff here for about 2 years, do a couple different things, including a Basics of Buddhism class on Sundays, metta meditation, and some Dhamma readings. And basically, I am a lay disciple, as I said, which means that I am not a master or monk or guru or anything like that. I'm just a regular practitioner on this path. So, okay. What we do here is a Dhamma talk, and it's like a traditional Dhamma talk that you might go and listen to from the monks in some ways, and in other aspects not. Traditionally, when you go to a Dhamma talk, there's a period in the beginning where the monk talks, and then there's a question and answer period and a discussion period after. And that's similar here. However, it's traditional for the monks that you would hold off your questions until the end. For me, since I'm not a monk and I like to have a little bit of a discussion, I have no problems, and you should not feel that you are interrupting if you have a comment or a question. Feel free to make comments and questions during the discussion, during the talk period. Oftentimes, it's better to have a discussion and to have input than just to hear me going on and on. I think last week I went on for actually more than a half hour. Went on for about 50 minutes, somewhere's around there. But we had an interesting topic last week. This week, however, I have no topic. So, what I'm going to do is open it up to any questions or anything that you'd like to discuss regarding anything in Buddhism. Any topic, whether it's the different, what are the difference between the schools, what the different types of meditation, any questions that you have, in your practice. A monk that I consider to be my teacher, Bante Ji, he's a very wise and old monk. He's about 85 now. And when he does a question and answer period, he says, I cannot guarantee you an answer. Which is interesting, right? Because you think, you're looking at this wise master. I can't guarantee you an answer. So when I say, I can't guarantee you an answer, that makes even more sense, right? But what I can always try to do is put you in the right direction. So no questions, huh? Nothing that you'd like to discuss. Let's see. I can just pick a random topic. For those of you who have come to my talks, you know that I don't prepare or make outlines or anything like that. The talks. This is how the monks do their talks. So it's something that I like to practice as well. Really, the way when you do a Dhamma talk, it's not supposed to come from any kind of prescripted preparation, but from what you know with your own experience. And so I'm going to do the same. Let's see, what topic should I pick? And go through which one haven't I done in a while. I don't want to do the same topic that I've done within just the last couple months. Hmm. Oh, that's a very good question. That's a very good question, Susanna. Actually, I don't know if I've ever. I have talked about, being kind of the lone Buddhist, which is goes to the same effect. But and well, Luna, we can do that as well. Um, I think the starting with Susanna's question, how do you explain Buddhism to Christians and where God is? Well, of course, one of the main things, and I kind of know both ways because I was raised Catholic, strict Catholic, Catholic school for 12 years. Altar boy, Eucharistic minister, all that jazz. So I can see it from both ways. And the main thing that seems to, um, the main thing that seems to threaten or make people, Christians and Catholics feel defensive about talking about Buddhism is one of two things. The first one being that the Buddha is considered a god. So obviously that would be against, is it the first or the second Ten Commandment? God, see, it's been so long since Catholic school, I don't remember. I think it's the first. Thou shalt not take any god before me. And the second being that if they know a little bit more about Buddhism, there's this thought of that it's an atheist religion, that there is no God. And there's misconceptions in both of those. The best thing for you to say, and which I personally use, is what the Buddha said that he taught. The Buddha said that he taught only this: suffering and the way to the end of suffering. The Buddha did not say there is no God. As a matter of fact, in the suttas, the Buddha talks about the mythology, the whole varying levels of that, the Buddhist and Hindu mythos. He talked about the devas. Devas are like deities. So in Buddhist mythology, you have the deities, you have the demons, those are the yakas. You have all of these different types of beings, right? And there are these different types of heavens and hells and everything. But the main difference is that in Buddhism, none of that is permanent. And these deities and angels or demons, however you want to call them, do not live forever. They are just beings that exist according to causes and conditions, just like us. And there are different levels of these beings. And there are also, the Buddha talked about beings in all the world systems, on other planets and such. So there's no real propping up of these beings, in Buddhism. There's no, in some traditions, bodhisattvas are kind of propped up. But even still, there's nothing to the level of worshiping these beings or these people as a god. And in my job, I was in a house, and my job is child protective services. Actually, I just took a new position as a foster home recruiter. But in one of my last cases, there was a grandmother, and there was an aunt who was taking care of this child, and the aunt is not a Buddhist, but she's a meditator. So we would talk about this, meditation and stuff. But the grandma heard, she goes, "You're a Buddhist? Don't you know that Buddha's dead? And you can't pray to Buddha?" she says, "Oh, that's very bad." Blah blah. So she would say these things, and yes, of course, nobody prays to Buddha, but the perception is that people outside that the Buddha is this supernatural being, or a god or a deity, and he wasn't. The thing that if he was, I don't know if I would consider myself a Buddhist, because one of the main things that drew me to Buddhism and to Buddha Siddhartha Gautama was that he was just a regular guy. He was just like me. That's the amazing thing about Buddhism to me. It kind of goes with my growing up, my favorite superheroes, right? My favorite superhero is not Superman or Wolverine or any of these. It's Batman. Why? Because he's a regular guy, and look what he can do. So the Buddha, to me, is like my superhero. Right? He's just a regular guy, and we don't worship him. You will see there's things that people do that can be construed as worship, like bowing to the statue of the Buddha. That can, if somebody who doesn't understand, they're looking at, they're worshiping the Buddha. And that's not the case. So there are these misconstrued things, and I think that if you're talking to somebody who's a Catholic or a Christian, and you're kind of trying to explain to them that the Buddha's not a god, the Buddha didn't say, there's no gods or anything like that, that automatically kind of deconstructs or de-escalates their defensiveness towards talking about Buddhism. Now, one thing I will say though is when you say talking about Buddhism, there's no such thing as evangelizing in Buddhism. There's no such thing as converting in Buddhism. Buddhists don't preach about Buddhism. They don't, because that's one thing that you really have to be careful of. Because even if you're not doing it consciously, and I suffer from this, I really do. On Facebook, I have friends who are not Buddhists, but they're kind of spiritual and they kind of do meditation. And I find myself, they post something like what the Buddha said, or something, or something about karma, and me, I start, posting, this is what the Buddha said, blah blah blah. People don't want to hear that, even. This is just, you don't want to. You have to be careful, even if you're just trying to be helpful or you're just trying to discuss. People's perceptions can make them feel like you're trying to push something on them, and that's the number one thing that you don't want to do. The number one way that you show people what Buddhists are like is just by simply practicing. And this has happened to me, I've seen this firsthand. When you are at peace amongst people who are going nuts and stressed and anger and anxiety, when you are meditating, when you're at peace, when you're calm, when you're happier than everybody else around you, people see that and they think, what is going on with that guy? What is this all about? People have done this. People come up to me and they'll ask, what do you do? Do you do this? Do you do that? You're a Buddhist. Okay. And I've given people books and stuff like that who are interested. That is the best way to spread the Dhamma, for people who are ready to start to and interested to start to understand it. They will come to you. You don't need to go to them. So that's the number one thing about talking. You don't want to. It's almost really best to kind of keep your practice to yourself, unless they ask the questions. Now, that being said, assuming that they do just ask the questions, there's a couple different things. So say they talk to you about karma or rebirth, and they say, I don't believe in that rebirth crap. That makes no sense. You could say, the Buddha doesn't require me to believe in karma and rebirth, because he doesn't. From the Kalama Sutta, he talks about the Kalama Sutta is a famous sutta, because a part of that talks about there's this paraphrased, horribly paraphrased, and very misquoted quote that people, especially on Facebook, on the internet, you see it all the time. Do not do anything or believe in anything if it doesn't fit with your reason and common sense. You probably all heard that quote. And it says, dash Buddha. Wrong. That quote is totally wrong. But it's based off of something that is what the Buddha said. And basically what he said was, don't go by reports, by legends, by what people say, by what your teacher says, by what books say, by logical conjecture, by common. Basically, don't even trust your own perceptions, your own thinking, your own what you would consider quote unquote common sense. But only when you know for yourself that this action is skillful, this action is beneficial for yourself and others, then you can do that action. If it is not skillful, it is unbeneficial for yourself and others, then you don't do that action. And that's what the Buddha is saying, that it's not by, oh, it makes sense to me, so I'm going to do it. No. What he's saying in that is, you know through your own experiential knowledge that this is beneficial, so you do it. But anyway, there's another part of it when he's explaining to these people who are confused. There's so many teachings, so many religious gurus. They're going around, they're saying these things. How do we know what's right? And so that's where he talks about don't go by your own experience, your own intellect, your own experiential knowledge, not intellectual knowledge. That's a big difference. So another part of it, he says, suppose there is no rebirth. He calls it, suppose there is no fruit, which is karma ripening, which is the results of past karma. Suppose there is no fruit, and suppose there is no basically rebirth. I don't want to use the words that they say in the sutta and confuse. But then, if there is no karma, there is no rebirth, then practicing the Dhamma, practicing this practice, which is meditation, living a skillful moral life, dana, generosity, being generous, developing loving friendliness for all beings. Doing this practice brings benefits here now in this life. And if there is no karma, there's no rebirth, there's no heavens, there's no nothing afterwards, then you had much benefit in this life. You lived skillfully. You performed beneficial acts that were beneficial for yourself and others. That is living skillfully. That's a good life. So if there is a heaven afterwards, or if there is rebirth afterwards, or if there is karma, then you're doubly rewarded because you lived a good life. So you don't even have to, the Buddha doesn't even say you must believe in this, you must believe in that. So if they're talking about karma this, karma that, blah, 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 they don't have to believe in that. I'm somebody who, has been practicing for a couple years and who is on the path towards becoming a monk. And I can't say that I believe in rebirth. I'm agnostic on the issue. Now, they say that the deeper you get into your practice, you start to see karma and rebirth and how it works. I'm not there yet. So I can't speak with my own experiential knowledge on that subject. So, let's see, where are we going? We're still talking about, can you be Christian and practice Buddhism? I mean, believe in Jesus as a great teacher. I do. As a matter of fact, the only part of growing up Catholic, the only part of that whole religion that ever spoke to me was the words of Jesus. And ironically, the words of Jesus are very close to the words of Buddha. And that has kind of led to, in modern times, there's all these scholars now, all these theories that Jesus learned Buddhism or came into contact with Buddhists. You know, there's these 33 years, or not 33, he was 12 at the temple, and then he was 33 when he died. So there's these, 20 some odd years where we don't know what Jesus did. And so now there's these theories. He traveled here, he traveled there. Buddhism at that point was 500 years old. At that point, there was Buddhism in Alexandria. If you guys know the Great Library of Alexandria, that city was the pearl of the ancient world. That city is where the world came in one place together. The world came together. So there were Buddhists in Egypt at the time, and Iraq, and so it's not that far-fetched to say, that Jesus probably did, come in contact with some Buddhists. But that being said, I mean, that's neither here nor there. But I personally, I still consider Jesus to be, I don't, know or consider Jesus to be a God, but I do know from various sources, I don't deny that Jesus was a real person. I know he was a real person. There's various sources. Flavius Josephus, who was a Jewish scholar at the time, and a couple different sources. And just like there's some sources that the Buddha existed too. Some people say, the Buddha didn't exist. Some people say Jesus didn't exist. They're all made up. No, they existed. So for me, that's not even a question. To me, Jesus existed. He was a very wise person. I like a lot of what he says. I would never say anything bad against Jesus. So, yes, I think you can believe in Jesus as a great teacher. Now, there are what people call Christian Buddhists. If you get to a certain point, there's definitely kind of a conflict in being a Christian Buddhist. But in the very beginning, not so much. And the reason I say this is, being a Christian Buddhist, there is a point where Christianity and Buddhism kind of come to heads. And it depends on the type of Christianity. There's some priests who say things that are very Buddhist-like. But there's, Luna, tell the story. And the reason I say this is because in Buddhism, there is, from top to bottom, with rare exception, there's some traditions that are different in this, but what the Buddha taught, always, there is nobody that can save you but yourself. You have to put your own work in. You have to go to enlightenment. You don't rely on any outside source to save you, to help you at all. You are creating your own world. The mind is the forerunner of all things. You create your own hell, you create your own heaven. Whereas in Christianity, for the most part, you're taught that you are saved by God. You have this by the grace of God. So there's the conflict of not relying on an external force and totally relying on an external force. That can be a conflict. And that's where somebody who's going both ways can start to question and be conflicted and think, what am I going to do? Now there are some teachers. There's this Franciscan monk, and I don't have a link. I don't have his name, but I've watched some sermons of him, and it's amazing. I mean, he's almost like a Buddhist. What he says, he talks about God and stuff like that. But what he talks about is being your own teacher. You know, being your own person with God and all this stuff. And it's very interesting. So it's not in everything, but for the most people, you're going to probably have that conflict, as it were. But it also depends on how deep you go into Buddhist teachings as well. Some people, there's a lot of movements today, like secular Buddhism and pragmatic Buddhism as well, where they just take the meditation part and they just do that. And that's missing a lot of the point. So, you know, it's not just meditation in itself is not the means to an end. Meditation is part of the practice. And that's how the Buddha taught. And that doesn't have to be religious or conflicting in anything, you know, with any other religion in any way. It doesn't have to be that way, depending on your perspective and your reality. The Buddha taught that even Dhamma practice, even what he taught, is something that when you've reached the other shore and become enlightened, you dump it like the raft. You don't pick up the raft and go and land with it. You leave it there at the shore. Any teachings, all concepts are dumped as you move forward into enlightenment. Even Buddhism itself, which, by the way, I'm still not a big fan. I've never been a big fan of Buddhism because I don't see Buddhism as being about Buddha, and Buddha didn't see Buddhism about being about Buddha. I like to call it Dhammaism, but for some reason, to be honest, I don't think that's ever going to catch on. Because the Buddha said in his final days, in the end, it may be that some of you will think, who will take my place? Who will be the teacher when I'm gone? And the Buddha said, nobody. Ain't nobody going to be the teacher. No human will be the teacher. The Dhamma, the practice, the teaching is the teacher. And that's another thing that really connected with me, coming from a religion with, oh, there's a pope and there's this and there's that. No. The teaching is your teacher, and you are your teacher. Ajahn Chah, who's a very famous monk, he says the only book worth reading is the human heart. So now I keep yapping on and I'm missing Luna's story. So I want to read Luna's story. I'm going to back up a bit. Oh, Luna, that's great. That's funny. That's it. I like that. Well, my Christian friends say I can't be a Christian and practice Buddhism. Uh, Depends. It depends on. There are some, if you're going like into like born again Christians, and there are some different levels of Christianity that will have different views on that. Um, and it also depends on what they view as Buddhism. What I would like to know from them. What do they view as practicing Buddhism? What does that mean to them? Does it mean worshiping Buddha as a god? Does it mean that they think that there's all kinds of pagan rites and rituals or something? That's a good question. If they say that in the future, ask them what does that mean to you? What is your perception about practicing Buddhism? And then that's where you can come in and work off what they say. You can use a lot of the examples of what I said today, about talking about the Buddha not being a god, about karma and rebirth not being something that you have to believe in, and all of these things. There's some Christians actually that believe in rebirth. Well, the one thing, the whole all are one kind of thing is not really Buddhist in a lot of ways either. Um, it's more, I guess, it depends again on the tradition. Just like there's many different traditions that believe many different things in Christianity, it's the same thing with Buddhism. Um, there are like the Mahayana and the later schools that they do kind of go into dualism, and everybody's one and all of these kind of things, but it's not necessarily something that the older schools teach. Ah, my friend has got into Taoism, and I started reading about it, and I have the Tao Te Ching and all that stuff. It's pretty interesting. Lao Tzu was a contemporary of the Buddha. They were basically alive about the same time. Obviously they were too far away to have ever met. And there are some similarities that of what they between what they say, but in the end, it is very different what came out of it. So let's see. Just reading the chat, making sure I didn't miss anything. All are equal and precious. Yes, that is true. That is what uh, metta is all about. Even the beings that we don't like snakes and spiders, and all those beings we want to crush because they're in our house. All beings we have develop equanimity for as part of the practice. They do? What kind of purpose? Porpoise. I don't know if that's how you. That's. I know. That's just me being my sarcastic Silly self. So, any other comments, questions at this point for the discussion? Anything else, Susanna, that you want me to try and clarify with regards to speaking with Christians and people? Okay. The best thing when you're dealing with people, the best thing to always do is always analyze your actions and your thoughts and your actions of body, mind, and speech. And you have to try to see what the other person's perception is. Because you can come into a situation with very good intentions, and you're not trying to be pushy or defensive, but to other people they might see it that way. So you also have to come to realize that people won't change. People will only change if they want to change. And you can't change them and they won't change you. It's simple as that. The only thing you can do is try to be empathetic and accepting of all people, even if they don't like you, even if they're gonna from here on and till the day they die, you're gonna be a dirty pagan. Even still, you give them metta, you give them your loving friendliness, whether it's outwardly towards them or in your own mind. It doesn't matter. It all stems from the same point. And of course, there is the old adage: never speak about religion and politics with family and friends. Because it just gets into divisiveness. Thrown out of a Sunday school. That reminds me of my own little story. I think I was 10 at the time, 10 or 11, and I was a weird kid in that I was always big into history. I'm pretty sure I'm probably the only 9 or 10-year-old, at least at the time, that knew about the Holocaust and World War II and all of these things. And I knew about ancient Rome, and I knew about ancient Greece. And obviously I wasn't being taught that in school, but it's just stuff I love to learn, watching the History Channel and all of these things. Back when the History Channel was actually the History Channel. Or as some like to call it, the Hitler Channel. Because it played World War II and Hitler a lot. But anyway, so I'm in school. I went to Catholic school, like I said. There's a nun teaching the class. And we're watching a video. And the video is talking about the crucifixion of Jesus. Something which I also knew a lot about at the time. And yeah, Pawn Stars. Oh, I gave up cable TV about a year ago, so I don't know this counting cars thing, but but I can only imagine. So we're watching this video, and it's saying something. I remember it saying all of the other people are being just roped to the cross, but Jesus is being nailed to the cross. And I'll raise my hand because I was a goody two shoes. I was always, again, it comes from perspective, right? I wasn't trying to be arrogant about it, but it's just the way I was, just the way I feel like if something is wrong, I kind of have to point it out. And so I raised my hand and I said, Sister, what was her name? I don't remember, Sister Joan or something. And I said, that's not true. The Romans nailed millions of people to the cross. And needless to say, that didn't go over well. And so I was sent to the nun principal. You know, I mean, obviously I didn't really get in major trouble for it, but they don't like having being questioned by smart Alex. So and the nun was really nice. I mean, I knew her for years after that and everything, but it was just something that always stuck in my mind as the difference between Catholicism and Buddhism, and that Buddhism is always, not all teachers. I know some great monks that are not, but that's the way it is. So, but where was I going? Oh, Buddhism is you're always questioning. That is one of the basic tenets of Buddhism: free inquiry. Question, 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 question. But don't question too much that you go nuts about it. The Buddha talked about a couple things, four things that are being unfathomable, which means if you tried to think about it, nothing, you'd get nowhere and you'd go nuts. Being like those four being the beginning of the universe, the powers of a Buddha, the range of karma and how karma works, and what's the fifth one or the fourth one? I'm trying to remember. I don't remember the fourth one. But basically, so yeah, questioning is very good, and learning how to question and when to question is even more important. So, any comments, questions? We still have 15 minutes that we can use if we have it. If not, we can end now. Either way, it doesn't matter. That's a good question. A very good question. Because I've heard it, the regular spiel about karma, but I've also heard karma talked about in ways that you can see and understand in this life. Ways that go a little bit more deeper and harder to see. And types of karma that, and the definition of karma that I don't even know if I necessarily fully understand. But you can kind of see karma in your daily life, right? You can see that what you do creates ripples and creates consequences. All effects have a cause. So you can see that, something happened, and then 10 days later, something else happened, and sometimes you say, oh, that happened because of this. There's the basic, and really, that's really all of what karma is. Karma is, well, first of all, just to get a little technical, karma is simply action. Karma is volitional action, which means basically actions performed of your own will. You decided to do this. You chose to do this. So karma is volitional action and action only. When you say something like, oh, that's my karma came back to bite me, or karma is a bitch, that's actually not saying it the right way. Karma is simply the action that you perform here and now in the present moment. You're right here and now, you are creating karma. You are performing karma. What we view as the fruit, or what happens because of what we do, is actually called vipaka. it's the fruit. That vipaka is what happens because of our past actions. Yeah, the effect. Now, that's also not to say that everything that happens is because of our past karma. The Buddha said that this is not the case. Because that would be a type of determinism, like we're screwed, like we're stuck. Everything that's going to happen is just because of what happened in the past. That's not the case. You know, I was born handicapped or blind because I must have been, Genghis Khan in the past. That's not, that you might have been Genghis Khan in the past. Who knows? But that's not the case, or at least you'll never know if it's the case that I was born blind because I was a bad person in a former life. You could have been born blind because of conditions that were in the environment when your mother and father, conceived of you. We never know. You don't know. So, what karma is also not a system of justice. That's why the whole term karma is a bitch doesn't really fit. But what I will say though is that karma predates Buddhism. And there are different traditions and different belief systems, different religions that view karma in different ways. So when I talk about karma, I'm talking specifically about Buddhist karma, as opposed to karma in the Hindu tradition, etc. So karma in the Buddhist tradition is not to be viewed as some kind of karmic retribution or reward. Like, I do good karma, so I'm going to be rewarded in my next life. That actually might not be the case. The book that we're reading from Ajahn Brahm, The Art of Disappearing, he talks about that. Karma, the vipaka of your old karma can come back at any time. And who knows what you can be reborn as, right? So, karma is simply cause and effect. It is not, oh, well, damn, I was bad in a past life, so this is going to happen to me. I'm just going to have to deal with it. Now, that might be a cause. That might be what, you might have a pretty crappy life. But the difference is, and this is where the dependence on the self, or your own ability, as opposed to an outside actor, comes in. The difference is you have the choice to perform skillful karma here and now, and to change that. And somebody said something about changing karma or diluting karma. Yeah, karma can be altered. Karma technically can't be altered, but what they teach, and again, I'm going off of what I've learned. I don't know this firsthand through getting into deep meditations, but what is taught in the suttas and what monks teach is that sometimes you lose your train of thought. Where is it? Karma can be altered. Yes. That the more you perform skillful karma now, the less chances you give bad vipaka from the past to come to fruition. So, on the reverse side of that is the more negative you are, the more unskillful actions you perform, the more chances you give for unskillful vipaka fruit to come to fruition. And let's look at it. Let's look at it this way. Let's look at it and just right now, today, as an example. We don't even have to worry about past, futures, all these things. If you are a negative person, or you are consumed with negativity, and everything is always sucky, and you're always, oh, well, how are people like this? I can't do this. And unfortunately, I have one or two friends like this, longtime friends, like going back to college, who are on Facebook and stuff like this. They're always just so negative. And I've tried to help them in the past, but you realize you can't help anybody. The people have to be ready to be helped, and then come to you for help. So, but the more negative you are, the more you feed into negativity, the more likely you are to perform unskillful actions. And it doesn't have to be lies and murder and all this stuff. It could just be how you're not smiling, or how you're curt to somebody, or what you say to them, that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be anything major. And when you're talking to people, and the average person doesn't realize that what other people say and do to you has no effect on you. You only let it happen, right? So you're putting your negativity on other people who don't understand this, so they become negative, right? And so they become negative back at you and at others. So what are you doing with all this negativity and all this stuff? You're creating a less beneficial world around you. Now, if you do the opposite, and you create a more positive world, so that you're smiling, you're happy, you're kind to people, you're performing beneficial acts, and then they do that more. They're not going to, I'm going to only perform beneficial acts for the rest of my life, and anything like that. But it's an effect. It's a ripple effect. And this is something you can see in your own life here and now. You don't even have to worry about karma, past life, future life, anything like that. So you can see through your own experiential knowledge, through your own experience, that doing this creates a better world around you. And then that's what you do. You perform less negative, unskillful actions and more positive, skillful actions. And when you practice this, and when you do this more and more, you'll see that people, even if you're having a bad day, but you're normally very positive and very upbeat and very, you're talking to people, being kind and giving your loving friendliness to people and stuff like that. Even if it's a bad day, you'll see people will smile at you. People will be happy around you. People will react to you and how you've reacted, and the positivity that you've given them in the past. They remember that. So this is how you begin to create. You don't create a better world by going out on the streets and protesting or trying to change government or trying to do any of that. There's been problems with that since the beginning of civilization. There always will be. You create a better world by starting with yourself. And the rest just comes. You don't even have to worry about it. You're starting with yourself. That's how you create. Ajahn Chah says, and this is really just a paraphrase of exactly what the Buddha said, The greatest gift you can give the world is a calm mind. The greatest gift you can give the world is a calm mind. And that is because that's how you create the world around you. Because we aren't happy with who we are. Yeah. If we don't have loving friendliness for ourselves, we can't possibly have it for other beings. So if we're down on ourselves and we're negative, it's going to be very rare that you're going to see anything positive in other people. Very rare. There's some people, they just probably will hate humans just in general. I'm a human, I hate myself, I hate other humans, we all suck. All we do is kill each other and be mean to each other and cut each other off and this and that. Or we can be, we're all humans, we're all stuck in samsara, going around in this cycle of birth and death and suffering over and over again, and we're all going to lose everybody we love, and we're all going to have to deal with things we don't want to deal with, and all of these things. And when you start to see this and you start to realize that this is really how we are all connected, because we're all connected because we're all in the suck together. And getting out of it was a good thing. You won't be able to drag other people out of it, but your example might help lead people towards it. You never know. That's very good, Momoko. Very well said, Paloma. I like that, Luna. For those of you who know Ajahn Brahm, he tells a story about when he was a monk in the beginning, and they were in Thailand in the jungle, and Ajahn, and they had so many. I mean, he would be meditating and he'd have literally like hundreds of mosquitoes on him, biting him and all this stuff. And he went and he complained to Ajahn Chah, and Ajahn Chah said, "From now on, you will call these mosquitoes Ajahn Mosquito." Ajahn is basically means teacher in Thai. So basically what Ajahn Chah told him to do was to take this, what you consider a negative, horrible thing, and turn it into your teacher. And so that's what I do with things, especially with driving in my state, New Jersey, my home state. So when I drive, it's a lesson. Ajahn New Jersey driving. And you know what I like to do? When I start to feel myself getting very negative, I start to give metta. I say Sukhihantu. Every car I see, Sukhihantu, 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 Sukhihantu. It means may you be well, may you be happy. Sukhihantu, Sukhihantu, Sukhihantu. And this is something that the monks have done for a long time. Bhante Silananda talks about how, if he's from Sri Lanka, and he talks about how when he was a child he would do that. He would be on the bus, and every car he saw, he would say not Sukhihantu, which is the Pali, but he would say a Thai word, which basically means the same thing. May you be happy, may you be happy, may you be happy, may you be happy. And so when you start to do that to all of these cars, your mind changes. And you start to feel that connection again, and you start to feel the positivity again, and the aversion and the anger goes away. Sukihantu, 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 sukihantu. And then you're just there again. So that's a good way of dealing with situations that get you anxious, angry, with anxiety and aversion. Making it your teacher, Ajahn, New Jersey driving, and giving metta. You know, they say you can't really give metta to inanimate objects. You give metta to beings. But for me personally, I give metta to inanimate objects all the time, because really what metta is about is changing your own mind. And even if you have negative feelings for an item, an object, then that in itself breeds negativity in your mind. It is, depending on the tradition, and some say, yeah, the metta kind of goes to the person and this and that. Yeah, but really, what metta is about is changing your own mind. It's developing the equanimity within your own mind. That's really the reason why you do metta in your practice. I do these crazy fun things that are like military training events, and you have to carry like heavy logs and stuff like that, and so we carried this big log and we put it down, and everybody's like, "F you, log!" And what did I do? I gave the log metta. So because I was like, "Oh, it's okay, log. I'll carry you. No problem. I'm good." Instead of reacting to, and this is why I say you can give metta to all things, because it's about it's about your own mind, not necessarily others. So when that's how you know it's good, because not only can you be positive to beings, you can be positive to everything, all conditioned things, and you're positive in general. Okay. So, since we're 7 minutes over time, I think we're going to end here. Once again, as always, much metta to you all, and Sukhi Hantu, may you be happy.